Hello. So, as we begin our discussion of Mesopotamia, it's very important that we start with the geography. If you remember, geography means the land and the water of a region. And important is not only what the land is like and what the water is like, but also how the people who live there interact with it. Now, Mesopotamia is not a country anymore. In fact, Mesopotamia was never a group of people, but more a location. And if you take a look at the world map, the star shows you approximately where Mesopotamia was located. It's in Asia, right next to Africa. Here you can see four of the earliest civilizations in relation to each other. So you can see that Mesopotamia in green is sandwiched between the Indus Valley or India and Egypt. Mesopotamia has the unique distinction of being the very first place that a city was ever built. So when we talk about our hunter-gatherers learning to farm and settling in one place, this is where they did it. If you were to go there now, you would be in Iraq. So the country of Mesopotamia and all of the different groups of people who lived there don't exist anymore. The word Mesopotamia means land between two rivers. And so what you see here is a little bit of an outline, a simplistic map of the region. And we're going to look at how the mountains and the rivers created a really unique situation for the people who lived here during the very first civilization or the very first city. Because if you look at this, you've got mountains to the north and to the east, and deserts to the west. And neither one of those types of landforms seem like they would make a good place to live. We know mountains are hard to travel around, to travel over, and so there's treachery there. And it's really hard to farm on. Same with deserts. Deserts are hard to travel on, not because, not for the same reasons as mountains, but it's dangerous to travel over great distances in a desert because you don't have running water, you don't have access to water and things like that. Not to mention, there's not a lot that grows in a desert. So what was it that made this place so unique? And those rivers and those mountains are key. So the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, which to me, I look at it and when I read from left to right, it's E for Euphrates and T for Tigris when I go from left to right. And so that's like ET, the extraterrestrial, or the top river is the Tigris River, so T for top. That's how I remember which one's which. And they begin up in a peninsula north of the Mediterranean Sea, and they flow down into the Persian Gulf. This is what the land of Mesopotamia would look like without the rivers. This is the Syrian desert, which is located to the west of the Fertile Crescent. Obviously, you're not going to get much farming done there. What would you build your houses out of? There's no lumber, there's not rocks, it's just sand and desert. So it's not a very hospitable environment for living. So obviously, the rivers play a really important role. Here are those mountains that are north of the Fertile Crescent. And we know that mountains, because of their elevation, often have snow on top of them. And this situation with the snow that melts and goes into the rivers, flows downstream, is what allows the people in ancient Mesopotamia to settle here. So the melting of the snow each spring and flooding into the rivers causes the land around the Fertile Crescent to flood. Now, when we think of floods, we usually think that it's very bad, that there's going to be damage done. But honestly, the farmers in Mesopotamia are depending on that flood. They kept a calendar in relationship to the flood, so they knew when it was about to happen, and they could make sure their crops were gone, out of the way, and they built their homes and other structures far enough away from where the flood usually occurred that it wasn't a dangerous thing. Now, obviously, some floods could be worse than others and might have caused some problems, but for the most part, it was a good, predictable, and safe yearly activity, which allowed, as you can see, much more fertile land. Now, the word fertile I keep using over and over again, and that word means good for growing. So if you took dark soil that makes mud, the kind that you put in a pot to plant your plants, versus sand, only one is going to grow most kinds of plants well. The one that's dark and holds moisture really well, that has a lot of plant material mixed into it, decaying matter. That is what makes soil fertile. We talk about fertilizer. Fertilizer helps plants grow. Fertile soil helps plants grow. Okay, so what happens is as that snow melts, it runs down the mountain and it collects particles of dirt and debris and some plant life and things like that as it goes down the mountain. It runs into the river. Then in the river, it flows downstream. By the time it gets close to the Persian Gulf, where the two rivers meet, there's too much water and it starts to flood the banks of the river. After the water evaporates or sinks down into the soil, it leaves behind that film of debris that it was carrying with. And that debris leaves a film on the desert, which over time builds up and makes some good farmland. So in the middle of this huge desert, there's a tiny spark of hope because this was a small place where people could farm. So here you can see that the river is pretty inhospitable around the side, but we do have some spots where there is some green growing. We don't have a lot of trees, so what are they going to build their houses out of? Well, over here in the corner, you can kind of see that there's a building. You can see the windows there. And they would take mud from the banks of the river, and they would form it into squares, and they would lay those bricks out into the sun to dry. And that's what they would build their buildings out of. So they weren't made of cement and they weren't made of stone. They were mud brick. And so because of the river, they had their first building materials. So here is where the Fertile Crescent forms. So here is that Euphrates River, this one down here. The Tigris River is above it. You've got the mountain ranges of the Zagros and the Tigris Mountains over here, and those all melt and then run into the rivers, which flood. And down right here at the base, right next to the Persian Gulf, which is right here, that's where the very first city was built. So this is the richest soil, was down in here. On the other side, this is the Mediterranean Sea, and you can see how close Egypt is. This is Egypt and the Nile River right here. That kind of all blends together and forms kind of a crescent, if you can see this shape, like a crescent roll or the crescent moon. That's where it gets that name. Okay. There's another picture of just the landforms and how this is one part of the Tigris River. Obviously, this would be kind of hard to farm. It does get flatter the closer you get to the Persian Gulf, where the mountains flatten out. This is where it appears from space. So here we've got the Red Sea, and I can always tell it looks like I'm giving a peace sign with my fingers, or I think of bunny ears. And right here you can see the Nile River. It looks like a flower because it also floods. this is the Mediterranean Sea, and over here is the Persian Gulf. So the rivers are just kind of peeking out. Here's the Euphrates River and the Tigris River. But you can see that now, because they have controlled flooding over time, this is not a fertile area that much anymore. This is very much desert in the modern world because Iran and other countries in this part of Asia have done some controlling of those rivers because it doesn't flood every year. This is more of a dry region of the world. All right, so you're going to do some practice with some map skills. There is a geography practice on Quizlet where you can identify the parts on the map, and you're going to create a map for us as well. All right, so if you need to watch this again to understand how flooding affected that Fertile Crescent, please feel free to log in a second time. Thanks, guys.